Since our last video here a couple of days ago, we've had some more NHL teams eliminated from the 2019 Stanley Cup Playoffs, and as these teams are being eliminated, there's already lots of questions being posed as to what kind of changes they could be making this offseason to make sure they have better success next year. So today we're back with some additional NHL trade rumors, and we're focusing on some teams that are recently out of the playoffs, like the Lightning, Penguins, Jets, and the Calgary Flames. And we'll get into all that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as we've seen early on, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Pittsburgh Penguins both went down to defeat in a different kind of style than we were kind of expecting here, at least by many of us, both being swept in the first round. In 4 straight games, of course, the Lightning went down to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Pittsburgh Penguins fell to the New York Islanders. So both of these teams who were expected to have more success, especially Tampa, who were coming off an awesome regular season, breaking lots of team records and having a record-setting NHL season, certainly were not expected to lose 4 straight games. The Penguins, on the other hand, were in a little bit of a different situation, but either way, they certainly were expected to do better than have 0 wins and not very much goals on the board from many of their top guys here in the playoffs. Now, both of these teams, I think, are kind of in different situations. The Lightning window, I think, is certainly open a lot longer. The Penguins have already had their time winning back-to-back Stanley Cups a couple of years ago. Obviously, the last 2 years haven't gone quite as well for them, so they're likely in a bit of a different situation. But as far as the Lightning go, we very well likely are going to see them make at least some minor moves. They have some very tough decisions to make. They have a very big contract coming up here for restricted free agent forward Braden Point, who's had a couple of really solid NHL seasons now, and he's certainly going to be commanding top dollar. So in order to retain his services, they might have to make some moves regardless of the fact that they didn't have success here in the playoffs, but just to kind of keep him in the mix and to keep most of their other top forwards in the mix as well. So there is some speculation they might have to move another forward or two to kind of make room here on the salary cap, and also to make some changes here to kind of change things up for next year. So we might see guys like Alex Killorn or an Andre Palat or maybe even a JT Miller might be victims of the salary cap crunch in order to sign Braden Point and also to change the dynamic of the team here a little bit. So there's certainly some forwards to keep your eyes on. On the back end as well, they have a bunch of expiring contracts and they're going to have some tough decisions to make on defense. Obviously, they have guys like Victor Hedman under contract for an extended period of time. Same with Ryan McDonough. But they do have a bunch of other unrestricted free agent guys who likely don't return. I mean, unless they're willing to come back in a lower type of a capacity. But there's certainly going to be a lot of decisions within the Lightning. But the most speculation right now is around the forward group. Then we might see them make some trades around some of the forwards that I mentioned here. Now, taking a look here at the Pittsburgh Penguins, many believe that this roster needs a little bit more of a major surgery, and we're likely going to see a much bigger name possibly be moved. And it's kind of that time of year again, just like last year when the name Phil Kessel is being brought up here yet again. Now, I know for the last number of years it's been something that's been happening quite a bit off and on, and yet Kessel's never been moved. However, he was traded before a couple of times in his career, and it could possibly happen here yet again. I do think it's quite likely that guys like Crosby and Malkin don't go anywheres. I think for the most part, you can throw in Chris Letang into that mix as well, maybe even a Matt Murray, but I can see them looking at guys like Kessel or Olli Määttä, or maybe some other guys here as well, maybe a Brian Russ, you just never know with that. However, I do think that Phil Kessel would likely bring them a pretty decent return. I know one idea that I've seen posted online, which kind of makes sense in a way, would be maybe the Penguins and the Flames get together and have a chat here, but maybe reuniting the real deal James Neal back to the Penguins, who had some terrific success with them earlier in his career. Obviously, a James Neal for Phil Kessel at this point, 1-for-1, likely would not happen. The Flames would have to pony up more than just a real deal, especially after this past year. That contract's not looking real good. So obviously the Flames will have to add something more significant to the pie here in order to get a deal like that done. But, would Phil Kessel even want to make a move to the Calgary Flames? It's hard to say. He does have a modified no trade, and we'll have some say if that deal ever does get done. But the Flames would certainly love to trade James Neal. I don't think it's been a fit all season. He ended the year as a healthy scratch in the playoffs here, again, Game 5 against the Colorado Avalanche. So certainly things did not go the way of James Neal at all this year. He certainly had a terrifically real bad season. So we'll see what happens with James Neal and the Calgary Flames. He's certainly one of many question marks the Flames have to look at going forward. But it's certainly a contract I'm sure they would love to move, and it might have to be a bad contract for bad contract type of scenario, unless they really want to pony up and add something more significant to the deal. I know another scenario I've seen posted online might be a team like the Buffalo Sabres, for example, and swap maybe a James Neal for Kyle Okposo or something to that effect. There's lots of other guys out there that certainly have not favorable contracts that maybe they could swap with and see what can happen. Hard to say, but I know the real deal experiment in Calgary didn't work out, and it's certainly going to be a name that they do look to move, but because of the year he had, at the same time will prove to be very, very difficult. Now, speaking of Canadian teams here, the Winnipeg Jets are going to have a lot of tough decisions to make as well. They're going to have to shell out big bucks for forwards Patrick Laine and Kyle Connor, both restricted free agents, having multiple strong years under their belt now. So they're going to be very costly to retain, but I am confident they will get it done. But we might have to see some other players traded, including restricted free agent defenseman Jacob Trouba. Trouba and the Jets' relationship has been kind of iffy at times. They've had a really hard time coming to a long-term contract. It's yet to happen. They've been doing one-year contracts the past couple of years. It's been rumored at one point that Trouba didn't really want to commit to Winnipeg long-term, and that he might prefer to play somewhere else, but obviously those rumors have been really put to bed here for the last year or so. But at the same time, his contract is going to prove difficult to re-sign now with the emergence of the other guys that they need to get under contract for next year. So could have Jacob Trouba played his last game as a Winnipeg Jet? It certainly is possible, but at the same time, him playing those top pair minutes with Josh Morrissey have proven to be very valuable deep pair for the Jets. So, something that they have to tread lightly with, but it certainly could be a possibility. Like I said, a combination with the fact that he's been reluctant to sign long-term and that his value that he's going to be looking for is going to prove to be difficult for the Jets to sign him to. We might see Jacob Trouba find himself a new home next season. Obviously, these Stanley Cup playoffs have been very weird so far. We've had a lot of underdog stories. Many of the top teams are going down to defeat. We have more top teams that are kind of trailing or tied in their series right now, are not guaranteed to move on to the next round. It's a possibility at this point that the Western Conference playoffs might see all four of the series end with the lower ranked team moving on to round two. It's certainly a possibility at this point. I mean, we've already got teams like Calgary and Winnipeg are out. You get the Nashville Predators are down to the Dallas Stars. You get the Vegas and Sharks going to Game 7, so it's hard to say how that's going to go. We certainly could see all the lower ranked teams move on to round two. Although the lower ranked teams in some of those series, really it's not that whole much of an upset, but I guess we'll see here. The Eastern Conference hasn't been quite as wild, except for the Columbus Blue Jackets taking down Tampa. But as these top teams have terrific regular seasons and don't perform in the playoffs, there's going to be lots of rumors, lots of talk around what they need to do to move on to get better for next year, so they can have more success come playoff time here. But of course, we're going to be analyzing all of these teams individually with a dedicated video per team. In case you're newer to the channel, last year, right around the end of April, 1st of May, we started a series, which we'll be doing again this year, called the Off-Season Report Series, where we take a look at all 31 NHL teams. We kind of analyze their regular season and playoffs, how everything went for them so far, and kind of analyze what they need to do during this offseason to be better for next year. Take a look at any contracts they have that need to be done, potential free agent signings, potential trades, and just things in general that they need to do to be ready and prepared for a better season coming up here in the fall. So stay tuned for that series that'll be coming up here very shortly. So of course, as always, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on all the players we discussed here today. Obviously, all of these teams fell early in the playoffs, much earlier than expected, so there's lots of chatter here already on some of these moves, and I'd like to know what you think and what they should do and how to proceed here during their offseason. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button for more videos like this one, and hit the like button if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.